And so now we're going to be preparing for our message. Today, Pastor Mike will be giving the sermon on structuring the church for growth and harmony. And this is not a typical service, I think, that you would hear in most churches, but I feel like that it's actually so practical for our community and even in our personal lives. And I know it's something that actually Mike is very passionate about, and I feel like it's something that has made a big difference for our family and our community. So I'm really excited to hear everything he has to say. But let's start off with a offering song. So please just relax. You can close your eyes. You can just take in the music as we prepare for our service.
Chaos calls, but all you really need is to just breathe. Third cup of Joe just to get me through the day. Wanna make the most of time, but I feel it slip away. I wonder if there's something more to this crazy life. I'm busy, 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 and it's no surprise to see that I only have time for me. There's gotta be something more to this crazy life. I'm hanging on tight to another wild day when it starts to fall apart. In my heart I hear you say, just breathe, just breathe. Come and rest at my feet and be, just be. Chaos calls, but all you really need is to take it in, fill your lungs, the peace of God that overcomes. Just breathe. Let your weary spirit rest. Lay down what's good and find what's best. Just breathe. Just breathe. Just breathe. Come and rest at my feet and be, just be. Chaos calls, but all you really need is to just breathe. Just breathe.
Good morning. It's great to see all of you. Thank you for coming today. I hope you enjoyed the song. I don't know about you, but it's been a crazy week, crazy life, and I can relate to the song a lot. So maybe your life is not so crazy right now. That's great. Life ebbs and flows, right? Goes up and down. Sometimes, we go for, we can coast along for a little while, and sometimes we just can't. And it's reassuring. I mean, but you can't do anything about it sometimes. Sometimes you just have to kind of let go. Okay, can you hear me all okay? Loud enough? All right, great. So we're in the sermon series, as you know, the series of A Community Where God Dwells. And the series, the message today is Structuring the Church for Harmony and Growth. And I know that sounds kind of uninteresting, maybe a little bit boring. I hope that I can prove otherwise, but maybe not. We'll see. This is, like Adonia said, my wife. Anyway, my name's Pastor Mike. For those of you who are new, who may not know me, my wife and I, we pastor this church together. This is a topic that I'm really passionate about because I really feel passionate that the church should really feel like a family, and the church should be a source of deep inspiration. We should experience God in our church family and in our community and our experience in our day-to-day life. So we've created the vision statement based around that concept. And this series is based off of this second statement of our vision board in the back there, which is that we are a church that isn't a church, but a family where the experience of community, love, and God's grace abound. So I want to start off, hold up here a second. So what this really comes down to is how do we as a church get back to our spirit of youthfulness and inspiration? It's very common for churches to eventually, over time, kind of fall back on traditions and titles and roles and buildings, and you lose a little bit of the inspiration, you lose a little bit of the excitement of just being a part of a family and experiencing growth and experiencing God and all these different things that should come with being a part of a church or having a relationship with God. And one of the things that I recognized is that, well, maybe I'll get into that later. I want to share a little bit from the book of Acts in the Bible. The book of Acts is the first book after all the Gospels. Thank you. And it talks about what happens after Jesus died. And it talks about how the early Christians, how the disciples started the Christian church, how they began to reach out to the world and talk about Jesus, and it's really it's almost like reading a novel almost. But I just want to share a little bit about this. This is talking about the early church, and this is talking about after the Pentecost. After the Pentecost, the Bible says 3,000 people, became Christians basically, even though they didn't use that word at that time. And so they kind of made a mega church overnight, but they said they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe at the many wonders and signs performed by the apostles. All the believers were together and had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give to anyone who had need. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. So it's interesting to look back on what the original founding Christian church was like, because when you read this, it's really almost like it sounds like you're living in a commune almost. But it says some really interesting things. It says they were together and they had everything in common. Now that's kind of an interesting point because, nobody has everything in common, right? You're never going to meet another person in your life that has everything in common with you. That's part of the beauty of humanity. But they lived in common with a common purpose. They lived as if they had everything in common. And if somebody was in need, somebody would just go sell some property or would sell some possessions, and they would take care of one another. And every day, not Sunday morning. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes. I'm not sure if this is talking about communion or if it's just talking about sharing the meal, but they spent a lot of time together, and they were glad with sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. This was before they started to get a lot of persecution. And every day, more people joined their flock. I want to share a little bit also about our church. This is from Reverend Moon's autobiography. Reverend Moon's our founder. He shares a little bit about what the first what it was like at the church when they first started, founding time. He said, people who attended called one another shikku, which is a Korean word for family member. We were intoxicated with love. Anyone who came there could see what I was doing and hear what I was saying. We were connected by an inner cord of love that let us communicate with God. A woman would be at home preparing rice, and suddenly she would run off to the church. I do not like using the word kyohei in its common usage to mean church. Kyohei is a Korean word for church. But I like its meaning from the original Chinese characters. Kyo means to teach, and hei means gathering. The Korean word means literally gathering for teaching. The word for religion, jungkyo, is composed of two Chinese characters meaning central and teaching, respectively. When the word church means a gathering where spiritual fundamentals are taught, it has a good meaning. But the meaning of the word kyohei does not provide any reason for people to share with each other. People in general do not use the word kyohei with that meaning, and I did not want to place ourselves in the separatist type of category. My hope was for the rise of a church without a denomination. Okay. So I wanted to give a little bit of an idea of what both the early Christian church was like according to their own writing, and our church was like when we first got started, what it was like back in the time. And how in many ways you could feel like similar kind of experience, right? A feeling of closeness, intimacy. And it was exciting. It wasn't like just something that you go to on a Sunday, but it was something that was a part of your everyday life. So it's nice to think about the idea of, okay, well, that's really nice, but, in some ways, the apostles, they were all living as single people, and there wasn't, it wasn't the same. How do we go back to that? How can we inherit from them at that time into our life now? We have jobs, we have homes, we have children, spouses, other responsibilities. How do we bring that kind of the same spirit of closeness and closeness with God and closeness with one another into our church, into our community? And I realized that community is really, the church is really not that different from a family. Actually, families go through the same thing many times. Maybe your experience with your husband or your wife or somebody who's very close to you, many times can start off being can be really exciting, can be really inspirational, can be a lot of fun. But maybe over time, as misunderstandings happen, as miscommunications happen, maybe you hurt one another for some reason, or maybe you just felt like you were hurt by somebody's actions. What happens is we tend to put up walls and barriers because we don't want to get hurt. We don't want to experience pain in our life. So when something bad happens, then we try to make it so that doesn't happen anymore. I remember when I was really young, me and my sister shared the same bedroom, and I hated it. It was so difficult. We were only 2 years apart, but I couldn't stand her way of, we're so different interests, And I didn't like her messing with my stuff. So eventually I just had enough, and I took some masking tape and I just put a line in the middle of the room. I just all the way across, and I said, don't cross the line. Don't come on my side of the room. But my closet was on her side of the room, and so was the door. And it made it really I had to break the rules, my own rules. And eventually I got my own room. Thank you, Mom and Dad. But it was a little bit tough there. But it's kind of an interesting memory that has stuck in my head because, I didn't know a better way to deal with it. I didn't know a better way to resolve the issue. I just felt like I'm so tired of her. I just want to find a way that we can kind of separate our stuff and our lives a little bit, even though I have to, she would get really bothered by noises that I would make while I was sleeping and things like that. And it was interesting. I had another interesting experience. About a week and a half ago, I woke up, and have you ever had a dream where your teeth came out? I've read that that's kind of a common, that happens, because I found an article online, what does a dream mean when your teeth are falling out? So I figure other people have had this dream before, but I don't know if any of you have. But I woke up like 2 Wednesdays ago, and I felt something weird in my mouth. I reached up, and my cap had come out, my crown. And I'm thinking to myself, I hope this is a bad dream. And I'm sitting there for like 5 minutes. I'm like, oh, no, it's not a dream. Such a bummer. No reason, it just came out. And so I had no choice, and I had to go to the dentist. And I hate going to the dentist. I have a real, because when I was young and I was in grade school, I got into a dodgeball accident. I'm not going to get really detailed about it, but I broke my front 2 teeth playing dodgeball at school. And shattered, pieces went all over the floor, and I had to go to the dentist and get crowns put on. And it was awful. It's just an awful experience. They had to grind my teeth, and I had to get numbing shots, like 3 of them. And, it's just, dentistry has come a long way in 15 years. They still have to use tools and, everything, but it's just so much easier, simpler, much nicer than it was back then. But I just remember, I just hated the experience so much. It was so traumatizing in a way that I never wanted to go back ever again, unless I had to. And I had to a couple times because over the years, different things happened. One year I was in martial arts and I got kicked in the mouth and my crown broke off, so I had to go back. But, they didn't have to grind my teeth again. I'm sorry, I know this is a little graphic, but hopefully you're not getting sick or something. But, I really, you're supposed to take good care of your teeth, and you're supposed to go to the dentist, and get checkups every once in a while, right? But I had to go to the dentist because my tooth came out. I couldn't put it back in myself. But I hadn't been to the dentist in probably since I was in high school. So I'm thinking I was probably 16, and I'm 34 now. So what is that? 18 years? So I haven't been back in 18 years. And of course, it's really embarrassing, right? Because there's certain things a dentist can do that you can't really do yourself. And they're in your mouth, and they're showing you pictures, and you got to get this taken care of, and you got to get that taken care of. And it's really a little bit of an embarrassing experience. Very intimate in a way. But I'm sitting there talking to the dentist and, making small chat and everything. And he's like, so what do you do? I'm like, well, I'm a pastor. And he's like, oh, it's interesting. So we got into talking about that for a while. And we got into talking about how he, as a dentist, he has to deal with people like me all the time. People who had a terrible experience as a dentist. Maybe they were in a war, and their only experience of being at a dentist was, in the military, like in Vietnam or something like that. Or maybe they just had a bad experience like me, or they just don't nobody likes pain, right, and discomfort. So he was saying that, he has to deal with this kind of thing often where, people have all these concepts and painful experiences about dentists, so they don't go. And when they do come, they have all these barriers, and they're really, they're uptight, like I was. And I was sharing, that's like my life, because people have all kinds of concepts and barriers and angst and pain about religion, about God, about this kind of thing. And it's really hard many times to get beyond that because many times they're deeply ingrained into us, experiences that we had as children. Maybe a very disappointing experience with a religious leader, or maybe our parents were really religious, or they tried to teach us religion, but they were hypocrites, or they didn't put it into practice in their own life. These different kind of things really leave an impression on people. And it was kind of interesting how much common base me and the dentist had. It was actually a lot of fun. And I invited one of the assistants to come to our church. She hasn't shown up yet, but I have to go back there, so we'll see. But it's been frustrating for me because I can't talk normally without that part of my tooth. And hopefully, within a couple weeks, I'll get it dealt with. I'd really hoped that I would have it fixed before service today, but what are you going to do? But in case you were wondering, that's what's going on with my teeth. But this is a part of a human experience. This is part of life. We go through life, and life is difficult at times, and we go through disappointments. We have painful experiences. We have expectations that aren't met, and they become a part of our everyday way of doing things. They become a part of, as we grow older, we become less and less free because we are less and less wanting to try the things that maybe we were excited to do as children. This happens a lot in a married life. Me and Adonia, we were talking a couple weeks ago about, different ways in which we can save money. And, one of the most difficult things that couples deal with is money, right? There's three things. There's money, sex, and what is the other one? Food. Thank you. Money, sex, and food. And money is a really difficult thing because different people have different ways of looking at money. Different experiences with money, different ways. For a lot of people, spending money is tied to happiness. And some people, saving money is tied to happiness. So you have two of those people come together, and you have to find a way to make things work. But it can be really hard, and you can hurt each other in the process. Almost guaranteed. Like there's almost no way around it. But part of life is working through those kind of difficulties. Part of life is working through those experiences of feeling hurt. Part of life is about working through those challenging experiences, and that there's no difference between that and also dealing with our church. In our church, we're not married to one another, but we still have to see each other, and we kind of ideally look to one another for support and encouragement and comfort in difficult times of our life. That requires a little bit of intimacy, and it requires a little bit of vulnerability. But over time, because we're so different, just like in a marriage or in a family or even in a business, difficult experiences happen. Maybe I had an expectation that other people in our church would have the same kind of faith I have, or would contribute in the same way that I contribute. Maybe someone doesn't come to church so often. Maybe somebody doesn't tithe. Maybe somebody doesn't help me when I'm in need. And it can be easy at those times to accumulate some frustration, some resentment, some pain, and hurt. And just like in a couple, when those experiences happen, then we become distant. We become separated. And when we become distant, we become separated, then we lose closeness, and we lose intimacy, and we lose this kind of stuff that we were talking about. One of the other things that happens, besides the separation, is that we become tempted to put up barriers, which in many times in a family manifests itself in the way of rules. We don't want our kids to behave a certain way. We don't want our husband or our wife to behave a certain way, so we try to create rules. Now, I'm not saying that rules are bad. I think that boundaries and guidelines and rules can be used very constructively. But when they're used in a response to pain or a difficult experience, they only serve to separate and create a lack of closeness and kinship. So, let's use the example of money. You have a couple that sees money very differently. And let's say one person really likes to save, one person likes to spend. So the person who saves says to the spender, well, you can only spend this much money every month. Or, you can't have a card, you can't have money. I mean, that can work for a little while, right? But is that an end goal of any relationship? I don't think so. Eventually, the hope is, right, to be able to work things through and to get on the same page. And eventually, we don't need the rules because we have a relationship, we have trust, we have codependency, so to speak. But sometimes, and I'll admit, I'm in the boat too, it can be tempting to give up on the relationship. That person is never going to understand how I feel about this subject. We're never going to see eye to eye on this point. And that's where you really run into trouble. Because the end goal of any marriage, end goal of any relationship, and the goal for our church and the vision for our church is that we become like one. That we don't need to be always telling each other what we should do or what we shouldn't be doing, but that eventually we understand both sides. In a family, you can only say for so long that you have to listen to me because I'm your mom or because I'm your dad. That'll work when your children are young, but when they're old, it doesn't mean anything. And eventually, if you don't have the relationship, if you don't have the connection, then no matter what you tell them, it won't necessarily have any meaning. So a healthy church is structured for unity, harmony, and growth. I mentioned this point in my sermon 2 weeks ago. So for our church, we want to structure our church like a family. And we want to structure our church like a family that is depending on relationship to be able to get things done. It's in a church, what some of the things that you often see that are become turning points for a church, that turn a church from becoming a very spontaneous or inspired church to becoming a church of politics or bureaucracy, is the same thing that you see in a family. Conflicts and scandals, and also just lack of leadership, lack of clear direction. And when these kind of things happen in a church, the relationships and trust become weak. We don't have that to run things with. We end up running the church based off of policies and rules and committees. But that doesn't really work for running a church. Unless you want to have a church that's very stifled and bland. Church has to be run based off of relationships and ministry. This is the most important thing that any church has, is the people and the things that it's doing. You go to a lot of churches now, and a lot of the people are in committees, and they're on different boards and making decisions for other people to do. You can't do that in your personal life. You can't, subcontract out your parenting. You can't subcontract out your husbandry or your wifery. I don't even know if those are words. And just like in a church, we can't subcontract out leadership. We can't subcontract out relationships. We can't subcontract out heartfelt ministry that comes from the desire for people to just want to do something. They can't be relegated to some kind of a committee or group or something like that. So in our church going forward, we're going to see a lot less voting on things. We're going to see a lot less committees. Actually, I don't ever want to see another committee in our church. We need some work done. Maybe eventually we will need to seek out a bigger building or do some add-on or something like that. Maybe we'll create something temporarily. But we're not going to run our church that way. We're going to run our church based on relationship, which is really difficult. It's very, very difficult. Actually, have been dealing with this a little bit lately. I have, in our life, we want to have control, right? We want to feel like we're in control of what's happening in our life. When Adonia and I first moved here, our kids they just went through a period of time where they were really difficult. And we didn't know what to do, frankly. The kids were just not listening to us. And we would want to go somewhere, and one of the boys would just be in the bathroom for like 20 minutes. And we're like, we gotta go. And he's like ignoring us. And just a lot of different kind of stuff like that would happen. And I got to the point where I got so frustrated that I thought I needed to go to counseling, or I needed a group, what do you call it, like a support group. Yes, support. I was trying to find support groups for men with twins. Because I thought maybe, because my challenges are slightly unique in that way, I found there really are almost no support groups for men whatsoever. Which I thought was kind of sad, because I was there looking for one. I went to one, and it was at this church nearby DU, and I went there, and I'm looking around, and I found this guy sitting in this room, like just chilling. And I'm like, is this the support group for men parenting group? And he's like, oh yeah. He's like, I wasn't expecting anybody. Usually the people who come here are like divorced guys who just want to vent their issues. And I'm like, oh wow, that's really inspiring. And we hung out and we talked for a while, and then I left and I never went back. And eventually, Adonia and I, through Facebook or something, we found this website this group called Positive Parenting. And this lady has made all these videos about parenting. And we realized that we eventually, after just going almost insane, we've realized that what was happening was that because we made such a big change in our lives, our kids, even though they didn't necessarily know what was going on, they felt like there was no control. There's no sense of control over their lives. And they needed, one of the things that children need, and all human beings need, is a sense of control. We need to have some sense that I have a say in the decisions that are happening in my life. And our kids didn't have that. And so they were kind of acting out, in a sense. But they didn't know how to express it, and they didn't know why it was happening. So once we realized that, then we started to give our kids choices. Instead of just herding them around because we were in a hurry, we were like, hey, would you like to go here today? Sorry, or would you like to do this today? Or, instead of just saying, no, you can't do that, we would try to give them options or try to bargain with them or something like that. And actually their behavior improved drastically, almost within a week. It was amazing. And, having a sense of control in our life is not a bad thing. We need that to a certain degree. But it can become overbearing when we do it because we're just wanting to... thank you. Good idea. Because we're just wanting to, for our things to be the way that we want them to be in our life. And I've been dealing with this situation where we have our vision as pastors of this church, and we also have the expectation from you all, about, what we would like to see, what you would like to see happen in the community, what you'd like for us to be doing, and that those are not bad things either. And then, on top of that, we also have, from our national church in New York, expectations too, like, hey, there's this event happening in Las Vegas. You got to bring some people there. This event happening in Korea, and we need to support that. And I was going crazy. That's why I wanted to play the song. And, sometimes we just have to let go of that stuff. We can't control everything. We can't expect things to be the way we want them to be all the time. And as much as we need this as a church, we all need to be reminded of this all the time because life just throws stuff at us sometimes that we're not expecting. Even though we try to live our life in the way that we want to live it, and we want to try to live our life consistently and peacefully, and and in harmony with the people around us, we don't have control over the things that happen. Sometimes God sends us things, situations our way, experiences our way, because he doesn't want us to get stuck in the everyday living the life the same way. Life is bigger than that. Life means more than that. And I think that's the same way for our church. We don't want to get stuck in routines. We don't want to get stuck in just doing things the way that we do them because that's the way we've always done them. Or doing things the way that we're doing them because of some bad experience or because of some painful experience that happened. Now, I recognize that that's not an easy thing to do, but we have to go backwards. We have to look at where we're at now. We have to recognize, well, we started off in a really great place. Many of you, when you joined the church, many of you, when you got married, when you got blessed, it was so exciting, and there was so much going on, and it was a lot of inspiration, and I knew exactly what I was doing, and I dedicated my life to it. But then over time, we become burdened. And we become burdened because difficult things happen, and we don't know how to deal with it in a way that we feel like we got the better end of the stick, so to speak. Like we ended up with a better situation afterwards. So we need to go back, and we need to look at those situations. We need to let go. And we need to have a fresh beginning. Our fresh beginning, we're doing it anyway, but each and every one of us has to go on kind of that journey. We have to let go of that stuff. Otherwise, we can be in like the Old Testament type of spirit of the church, where it's like breaking bread together and meeting together every day and studying God's word every day and witnessing to people every day or whatever, but our spirit isn't there, even if we're in it with other people. So our hope is that, and our vision, our commitment is that as a church and as a pastors of the church, we're creating the form for our church to be that way. And we're trying our best to live that way ourselves. We're trying our best to live, difficulties. I shared with you a month or two ago about how, our son's bike got stolen, and the initial temptation was just to get really angry and put up video cameras all over the church. But that's not the vision that we're going for. I'm not saying we need to be stupid and just let people come in and take all our stuff, but we don't want to become paranoid of everybody either, right? That's not the kind of vision that we're going for, because there are people in our community here, our neighbors, you never know. Some of the greatest people in the history started off as criminals. God used Paul to create the church. Paul was a Christian killer. He went out of his way to torture, imprison, and kill Christians. And God used him to build the Christian church. So we never know about people. We never know, and the last thing we want to do is exclude people because we're stuck in a sense of survival and trying to keep people out. So I just want to finish on this quote from the Bible. Let there be real harmony so that there won't be splits in the church. Be of one mind, united in thought and purpose. Please join me in prayer. Good morning, our most beloved Heavenly Parent. We're so grateful to be here this morning. Thank you, Heavenly Parent, that we can be involved in the work of recreating our church, because we know that there are so many people in this world who they believe in you, they believe in a God, but they see so much pain and suffering and hypocrisy in churches, Heavenly Parent. The last thing that we want to be is to be like that. I pray that we can be a source of inspiration and hope for all people who are searching for what we have. I pray, Heavenly Parent, that we can continue to always walk in a spirit of freshness and newness, no matter what kind of difficult experiences happen in our life, whether it's in our families, with other members of our church family, whether it's in our personal lives, Heavenly Parent, that we can we can find ways to go beyond them. We don't want to get stuck and we don't want to get stopped, Heavenly Parent, in our lives just because we go through difficult experiences. They're just a part of life, Heavenly Parent. Everybody goes through difficulties. We live in a world with a lot of problems, and nobody has an easy life, Heavenly Parent. I pray that we can be your children that can not just live a life and deal with the burdens that are on our life, but that we can go beyond that. We can rise above our circumstances and our difficulties and become of one heart and one mind, because we know that you need your children to not be fighting and not to be divided, but to come together as a family to fulfill your purpose for our church, whatever that might be, Heavenly Parent. We know that whatever your purpose is, we can't fulfill it if we're separated and divided and not united together, Heavenly Parent. So I just pray that we can do what's necessary, that we can do our part, and that also that you can help us to pull together as a community to overcome whatever challenges and difficulties are in the way, Heavenly Parent, so that we can rise above all these things, and that we can become a church that truly brings you inspiration, that hope, and become a beacon of light for the people of this world who are looking for what we have. Thank you, Heavenly Parent, for this day, for all brothers and sisters who are here today, and I pray for everybody that couldn't make it because they are your children as well, Heavenly Parent. I offer this prayer in the name of Michael and Adonia Hendrick, blessed Central family, amen and adieu. Thank you so much, everybody.
It's on. Okay. Thank you, Pastor Mike. This reminded me, I opened a new box of Celestial Seasonings tea this week, and Celestial Seasonings tea always has a couple little inspirational quotes on them, and this one said something like, "Let today's painful experiences become tomorrow's beautiful memories." And I thought, oh, that's a really good one, and I feel like it's all a matter of perspective. Our painful experiences can remain painful experiences. Like Pastor Mike was saying, we can continue to react or continue to build walls, or we can start fresh, and then it can become a beautiful memory because we created something new and even better out of it. So thank you so much for that beautiful message. At this point, we'll have our offering. So if you did not yet put your tithe into the box in the back, you'll have an opportunity as our welcome ministry brings it up to the front. You can also, we'll be having some reflection music, so you can reflect on the message, meditate. You could also give a donation or tithe if you like. So yeah, please just take this time to relax and reflect. So for our local announcements this week, first of all, like every week, we have our Who Are We presentation after service. This is when Pastor Mike gives a brief introduction to our faith, our history, our community, and also our vision going forward. So you may notice that sometimes we do things a little differently than what you see in other churches, and this is a great way to see why and to really connect to the whole purpose of why we're here. And that will be during lunch, right after service, in the French Ministry Room, which is the room directly on the other side of the cafe here. So please join Mike for that. I'd like to invite up Peggy, actually, to share briefly about this fundraiser for Grandma Dora's headstone. She's, for those of you who knew Grandma Dora, she's a wonderful lady, and I'll let Peggy share more.
So how many people here know Grandma Dora? Most of us. Anyway, she's a wonderful lady, and she started coming to church here in about 1971. So she was a faithful member, what we used to call a home member, for so many years, and I'm sure we all remember her making cookies and cakes for us and supporting everything we did. And she passed away in 2013, and her husband probably passed away about 10 years before that. And they're both buried in Crown Hill Cemetery, which is near my house. It's also where Christine is buried. And but she still doesn't have any, headstone or plaque there on the grave. So I sometimes go there, but I always feel sorry about that. And the family has put a plaque on a bench at Wash Park, a commemorative plaque. And Wash Park, of course, is very close to where they lived for many, many years. But still, I feel like it's not good that she wouldn't have any gravestone. So I'm trying to do a fundraiser because after 5 years, I decided that nobody else was going to do it. And so if you'd like to give a donation, I've been making some applesauce because there's an apple tree in the backyard. And so I've got some applesauce downstairs. If you can donate $20 up to $20,000, no, up to $3,000, because that should about cover it. I'm going to give you some applesauce. It's organic. There's sugar, sorry. If you want some sugar-free applesauce, you can put in an order for that. I can make that too. So anyway, I hope that we can all contribute and that in this way we can honor her service to our community and her identity as our sister. And Dora and Armin got blessed at the same time that Roger and Carol, and even my parents too, and Dariush's parents all got blessed in 1985 here at the church in August. We had a wonderful ceremony at that time. So anyway, I hope that you can contribute. Thank you.
I have memories when my twins were first born. I think it was like the first Sunday I came to church with 2 little babies, and she was like, "Oh, I know it's hard." I had Irish twins, and she shared what that was like, and she was really sweet. Also, homemade applesauce is really delicious, so I recommend donating. Our next announcement is that we have a new ministry launching this week, and I'm very excited to share that with you. So if you haven't yet met Darshell, she's a wonderful lady. Raise your hand, Darshell, so people can see who you are. She's got the peach shirt in the back there. Yeah. All right, round of applause. She has volunteered to start to really head up and coordinate the cleaning ministry, volunteers for keeping our church beautiful and clean and welcoming for everybody who comes. And so what she's done is she's organized a list of rooms that you can sign up for a room, and a couple of rooms, like maybe like the chapel or the dining room, a couple of people can take care of together, and it's for a 3-month period. So there's a clear start time and a clear finish, and at that point, if you'd like, you can take that room again. You could sign up for a different room. You could take a break for 3 months if you like, but if you think that you'd like to contribute something in that way, then perhaps Darshell, could you stand at the back of the room at the end of the service, and people could just come up to you and sign up? Okay, great. So Darshell will be at the back of the room before you exit at the end of service. So please, if you have it in your heart to do something, introduce yourself to her, make friends with her. She's super friendly, and she can help you find your room, find the cleaning supplies, let you know what needs to be done. It's very clear and it's very simple. So once again, thanks, Darshell. Okay. Every Thursday at 7 p.m., including this coming Thursday, we have a Bible study, which is led by Dr. Hendrick. So this goes deeper into the Bible, uncovering some of the mysteries of the Bible, and just finding clarification on it and application in your life. It's very insightful. So please come on Thursday at 7. And these are our upcoming Divine Principle retreats at the IPEC, International Peace Education Center in Las Vegas. This is really a place where people from all over the country can have a great experience together as they kind of step outside of their normal daily lives and routine, just really focus on some of the things that are important in our life that we don't always think about. So there's upcoming ones in October, November, and into December. And if you'd like to go, This is the location. Please let us know. We can also help support you to go. Next week, the Mahardy family will be both cooking and cleaning, and this week the Bruners are cooking and cleaning. So let's give a round of applause and thank them. Hey, I believe that's it for this week.